This is a introduction to smart folders and records management in Alfresco 5.1. I'm going to talk about Alfresco smart folders. I'm going to talk about rules, which are actions which you can define in the Alfresco repository to do bits of routine logic, and this demonstration has one or two rules that I'll be talking about, and I will begin by introducing Alfresco Records management. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to be using Alfresco 5.1 and Alfresco Records Management 2.4. So we start with a demonstration of smart folders. So smart folders are a new feature in Alfresco 5.1 that allows you to define query-based folders. So these are folders that are backed by a database query. The one nice feature about Alfresco smart folders is that you can also add content, which is unusual for this type of application. So in this simple example, it's modeled on a very simple insurance claim. So in this system we have a normal Alfresco folder called claims, and within that folder we've had three cases. We've had a case by Mr. Bean, a case for Mr. Bond, and a case for Joe Doe. If you've seen Alfresco, previous versions of Alfresco before, you should be used to folders. But what's new are these folders with the magnifying glass here. So these are smart folders. So if we look at the Bond folder, we have some documents within this folder. We have a claims form here, which is an insurance claim form for Mr. Bond, and we have a couple of pictures. This should be an insurance claim, so it should be damage of cars, but these are pristine cars because this is a demonstration. Okay, so and then we have smart folders within this this case. So these have been automatically generated by the case, and I'll be explaining what they are and how they work. I should point out that this is just a sample application, so the smart folders can be configured according to requirements and need. This is just an example of what they can do. So we start this demonstration by creating a new folder. So in Alfresco, we create a new folder, and I'm going to create a new folder called Gold 1. So so we give it a title and description. Now, so that was a folder, and as I mentioned before, behind the scenes a rule has run, and that rule says that any folder created within this claims should become should have a smart folder template applied. So if we look within the gold folder that I just created, it's created a set of smart folders. So the first one is assessments, and if we look within there, we've got a folder for images and a folder for final assessments. We've also got some other folders which have been created for corresponding correspondence, forms, policy documents, and the review process. So if we look at this, the properties of this gold folder, we will see that at the bottom an Alfresco aspect has been applied, and this has some claim details that we need to fill in. So again, these are just for the purposes of the demonstration. So we've got a claim number that we can set to something, we've got an insurance policy number, we've got a handling, and we've got a date, which I will set to day, which is the 26/05/2016. So now we have a smart folder. We have a normal folder with a set of smart folders applied to it. So not terribly exciting at the moment, but if I drag and drop a picture into this smart folder, so saying the smart folder is query based, but we can define content ingestion rules. So I'm going to upload a piece of content into this smart folder. So if we take a look at this, it's a picture of Mr. Goldfinger's car. And also, for the purposes of this demonstration, we have an insurance claim. So I'm just going to copy that into the folder as well. So that's a PDF document for the for Mr. Goldfinger's insurance claim. So if we now look back into the assessments smart folder, we will see, if we look in images, so this particular folder has been defined to hold images. So images for this gold one case. If we look in final assessments, it's empty because we have no final assessments. I'll come back to that in a bit. So that's just a quick introduction to a smart folder. So that's an example of a smart folder selecting by content and MIME type. But we can also have we can also cut the data in different ways. So in particular, there's a set of smart folders which is claims by type. So this will find claims for accident insurance, and any new accident insurance will show up here. So that was claims by type. So that's the new claim that we've just created. If you remember when I showed you the this gold one folder, there is a very simple property on this, which is claim status. So for the purposes of the demonstration, that's a very simple multi-valued field that we can change between new and other values. In a real application, that probably has a bit more business logic associated with it. So that was the folder, and also each document has a status associated with it. So this has draft. This will become significant slightly later in this demonstration. So claims by type. We could do policy documents. The other interesting thing is a query based folder based upon the identity of the current user. So that could be another way of presenting data within Alfresco that's useful. So my open claims, so I'm logged in as administrator. If I look at new, I see Bean 1 and Gold 2. Now I'm just going to log out as administrator, and I'm going to log in as John Doe, who is another user of this Smart Folders site, and has created a Mr. Bean account in particular. So if I look back at the claims application, again, if I look in the claims folder, which is not a Smart folder but it has a template, we see everyone. But if we look in my open claims, all my open claims, he just sees his JDO. If you remember, when I was logged in as administrator, I could see the bond one and the gold one, which were the claims created by administrators. So now I'm now going to log back in as admin for the remainder of the demonstration. So that's a simple site within Alfresco that has a few claims applications. You could have many sites within Alfresco with different sorts of data. Again, that depends upon requirements. So the second part of this demonstration is to talk about records management. So records management, if you think about something like your tax records, you probably at home have a filing cabinet with your tax records in, and you need to keep those records for, let's say, 7 years. At any point, the taxman might ask you what was your to fill out a tax return form for 5 years ago or something like that. So records management is all about storing the data you need to store, getting rid of it when you don't need it anymore, and being able to access it as and when. So in the Smart Folders site, we had users going about their daily business, completely oblivious of the need for records management. The records management site within Alfresco is for the records managers within the organisation. So if you haven't seen records management in Alfresco, I'll just give you a whirlwind tour. The file plan is where all the documents are stored, and that's stored in a folder structure that makes sense to the records managers. So you're not restricted to organising your files in the same way that makes sense to the end users. So, for example, if you go into a public library, books may be arranged by author or subject, or the classification codes on the side, whatever makes sense. So documents are stored in a file plan, and for the purposes of this demo, I've said there's some internal documents and some operations documents, and within those operational documents there's claims, and I've just created folders for each year. So we've actually had some documents earlier. So Mr. Bond has had some accidents, and these are defined as records. So they've got things like unique record numbers, and we've got audits, and as I said with the files plan, you can also define various policies on that folder to say we keep it for 5 years and then we destroy it, or well, and you also need to define who can see it, who can change it, who can move it and administer it. There's quite a lot in records management that I well, that we don't have time to explain today, but we'll just give an introduction. So we have a folder with some records in it. The other folder we should look at is this on-file records, which is where new files are added for the attention of the records manager. So normally you define some rules in the records management application that say if a new record comes in, then we deal with it. And in fact, I've defined a very simple rule for this particular demo that says if an image comes in, then we will just automatically file it. So I will be showing that in a little while. And but if it's not an image, then we need the record manager to take a look at it. So so this is the records management site, and so if I go back to the Smart Folder site, and go back into our Gold 1 claim, and if we look at this this image of the gold car, we would say, because we've got Alfresco Records Management defined, we can see there's a declare as record. However, for the purposes of this demonstration, I've also defined a rule that says when the document is made final, then it's automatically declared as a record. So if I go in and edit the properties of this document, and if I make this final, like that, it's worth saying that normally there would be some application logic that changes the status. But so I've just made it final. A rule has run, and now we have some records management information. In particular, it's got the a unique record identifier and a filing date. So that's just an example of a rule that defines something in record. So if we now look back into the records management application, look in the file plan, say we have no on-file records because I've defined a simple rule. But if we look in the operations claims 2016, we see our Mr. Goldfinger's car here, and the records manager could reopen it. He could add metadata or whatever, but it has been automatically defined. So now let's go back into our smart folders, and there was a Mr. Goldfinger's claim notification, and again I'm going to change the status of that to say it's final. So again, we've got record a record identifier on this document. And just going back to talk about smart folders, if you remember at the start when we looked at the assessments folder, we had some images in here, but the final assessments was empty. Because we've now set an image to final, when I look here, we've now got some data in our final, so that shows that the smart folders are dynamic. If I go back to records management and the file plan and look at unfiled records, this is because a rule hasn't run. The record manager would then deal with this piece of content and add it into the file plan. So I think that concludes our brief demonstration. If there are more specific points, we can cover that in a later demonstration. Thank you very much for listening.